Hello and welcome to Cloud on Air, live webinars from Google Cloud hosted every Tuesday. My name is Elise Roche and I'm on the data and analytics marketing team working around social and environmental impact. So I'm especially pleased to welcome you all to a special session that we're hosting today in light of Earth Day. We have with us Linda Mallers, the CEO and founder of FarmLogix, here to share her story about her organization, what inspired her to start it, and how she implemented GCP solutions in order to scale her business. As a heads up, we'll be taking live questions throughout the webinar, so feel free to submit them online. We have Googlers on standby to answer them, and we'll also be hosting a live Q&A at the end of our presentation. So with that, let's get started. So before we dive into the amazing work that Linda and FarmLogix has done to date, I thought it'd be interesting to rewind a bit and share a brief history on Earth Day. So Earth Day began with an ecological tragedy. In 1969, over 3 million gallons of oil spilled off the coast of Santa Barbara, killing over 10,000 animals in the region, from sea lions to dolphins to seagulls, among others. Now, by that point, America had been somewhat primed for a new ecological consciousness with the 1962 publication of Rachel Carson's A Silent Spring. It was in that work that she discussed the impact of DDT and other pesticides on the environment, on all living things, from crops to the pests that afflicted those crops to ecological systems, animals, and humans. Now, at that point, the US Senator, Gaylord Nelson, actually decided to mobilize on that new ecological consciousness and coming off of the movements of the 1960s. And so in 1969, in light of that ecological tragedy in Santa Barbara, he proposed a televised national teach-in on the environment, which took place on April 22nd. Millions of Americans rallied that day to support new, responsible environmental practices, leading to the creation of the EPA and also clean acts later enacted by Congress. From there, it grew into a global movement. So fast forward 40 plus years to the new and ever-growing challenges that we face with the environment, one of which is the concept and the opportunity of sustainability, at which food is at the heart of the matter. Industrial food systems are the common denominator. They sit essentially as a common denominator across a variety of factors that actually directly drive or contribute to climate change. To name a few, there are carbon emissions, pesticides and pollution, deforestation, and also water supply. And here's a taste of what's at stake. 1/3 of all human-caused greenhouse gas emissions is caused by the global food system. And agricultural practices are responsible for around 74% of greenhouse gas nitrous oxide in the United States. Now what that does is that actually contributes to the rising global temperatures across the world. With respect to pesticides and pollution, agriculture is the largest contributor of ammonia pollution and other nitrogen compounds, which compromises our air quality. And pesticides can be transported in runoff and groundwater and can result in toxic levels for humans and wildlife, which then compromises our water supply. And with respect to deforestation, 75% of global deforestation is caused by agriculture. And that's especially problematic given the stats that I shared around carbon emissions. Here we are emitting even more emissions into the atmosphere and depleting the natural resources that act as a counterbalance, the carbon stores, also known as trees. Since 1960, 1/3 of the world's arable land has been lost through erosion and other land degradations. And with respect to water supply, to support agriculture, rates of groundwater withdrawal are increasing relative to water source replenishment in the United States. That is, we are taking more water from the earth than the earth can naturally replenish. And by 2025, 1.8 billion people are expected to live with absolute water scarcity. Now that does not just impact agriculture or food, that impacts our potential for life, as water is crucial to life. So with all that being said, where does FarmLogix come into play? They're continuing the legacy of Earth Day by fostering these new, responsible environmental practices. They're changing the way that we eat, and they're also supporting local farmers. And that all begins with the story of Linda. At age 40, she discovered the thrill of the outdoors and the beauty of nature. She was selected to join the USA Triathlon team for her age group and began racing across the country. It was on these well-worn paths with the sun beating down upon her back that she had the opportunity to meet farmers, to hear their stories, to hear their strife and their struggle, their inherent desire to live a green and healthy life, and also be compensated fairly for the work that they do. She made an instant connection. And it was from that point that she, in 2012, later on, actually founded FarmLogix naturally at her kitchen table, a place of community, family, storytelling, and nourishment. She applied her experience in the futures industry, developing technology platforms, to the agricultural system in order to build and scale sustainable supply chains. Just 1 year later, FarmLogix became the farm-to-school solution for Aramark Chicago Public Schools and over 2,000 locations, overseeing the sourcing of over $20 million worth of local foods. Now today, FarmLogix provides food technology services nationwide with an eye towards corporate responsibility and actually offers auditing services. They also manage active procurement in over 15 states and maintain an e-commerce platform for buyers and sellers. Now these are all bullet points in a timeline, but there is a narrative arc that unites all of the above. And that is a story of revolution, that is a story of change, and a story of impact. That is a story around not only changing the way that we eat and empowering local farmers through integrated cloud computing solutions provided by GCP, but also bridging an increasingly large gap between people and food, between people and nature, and between people and our home, that is the earth. And that is truly in the spirit of Earth Day. So, with all that being said, I would like to welcome Linda to begin her presentation.
Hi, thank you so much, Elise, and thank you so much, Google, for having me here to tell our story. This is what a sustainable supply chain looks like. But before I get into the details, I want to go back and tell you a little bit about racing and the connection with the farmers. Some of the racing that I did was called adventure racing, where you race in wilderness locations with nothing but a pack on your back for 48 to 72 hours. And you are in Mother Nature, big, with all its glory and all its challenges. But at the end of the day, I was able to go home, put my racing clothes away, take a shower, and sign up for my next race. I learned through meeting the farmers along the way that farmers don't have that opportunity. They are faced with the power of Mother Nature every single day. So drought or rains or bounty or not, that is their struggle, and that is something that I related to very much. I found that really how disconnected we had become from our food system. We, and myself included, have really lost our connection that there are many who actually grow our food, and I realized that they are our heroes, and I wanted to help them, and that is how FarmLogix came to be. I started out as a CSA from my kitchen table, and it developed into this chart that you can see now. Basically, when local food was, this is actually a real chart about how Farm to Fork works at Chicago Public Schools, Aramark Chicago Public Schools, which is one of the largest school districts in the country, and they have the largest farm to school program that we run. And basically, when we came on board, you'll see that they have 4 distributors there on the chart. Each one of those distributors was told perhaps to source a local apple. And in doing that, they would source from a state perhaps, maybe from several farms, but basically you had 4 different sources going out and looking for that food. And a lot of the data ended up getting lost. And we realized that, and it was really hard for Chicago Public Schools to be able to tell any sort of story. So what we did was we created a technology platform, we call it Aggregate, that allows farmers to post their availability online so that large institutions like Chicago Public Schools can see what local food is available and actually order it. I put a red box around logistics aggregation because that's the role that we play. We come in there and basically allow the schools, universities, healthcare systems, business dining, such as maybe your cafeteria here, and sports venues, to be able to all order from the same farm. But we turn around and place a single order with that farm. The technology places a single order. So to the farmer, they know they've sold an entire trailer truck of apples. They may not know exactly who's buying from them, but that's okay. We're really helping them stay on the farm and helping future generations stay on the farm. We then turn around and the technology sells that product to the distributors. So the distributors have just one customer, which is FarmLogix technology platform and managed by our technology platform. And really what that does is it keeps the distributor from having to manage multiple small farm relationships, which is very complex and was hindering the movement. So we kind of sat there in the middle. We call it Aggregate, and Aggregate really streamlines the whole process. From there, we do our data collection, which is the chart that you see here, and run metrics. And those metrics are run nationally and by location. They're used by the government, food service companies, distributors, really to figure out where is this food going and what is selling. And that really helps the farmers determine what to plant. On the far right, you'll see this is a single day serving of carrots. It comes from Will Allen's Growing Power in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. 36,000 pounds, that is 1 day's lunch. And it feeds 350,000 kids at 650 schools. So really, to grow the local food system, you really have to think about scale and meaningful impact. And this is how we make it happen. So basically, responsible sourcing at scale requires equitable access to healthy foods. So we eventually, as we started to scale, went beyond the farm to school and started bringing that food into the home. And so last year, we actually won a grant as a team with the Chicago Community Trust and the Kinship Foundation. It was called the Food to Market Challenge, and it was to create a CSA where Chicago Public Schools were actually pickup locations for food that could be brought into the home and not just enjoyed at lunch at school. We now have several schools as pickup locations, and we've expanded that into the healthcare sector, and we have now 5 hospitals in Chicago that are pickup locations. We also work with a retailer, Peapod, and we work with them in multiple markets running a CSA for them. That's everything is farm identified, so consumers can order a CSA online and have it delivered to their home to support local farms. We also have farm to school, campus, and workplace programs that basically allow people to enjoy local foods when they're away from home. Our consumer custom e-commerce technology reestablishes the fact that we have a choice. I think what started to happen is what started to happen when big ag came and we started to scale for global production, we lost our choice and we started being told what we were going to eat and what was available. And I think beginning with Earth Day and then eventually the rise of the farmers markets, consumers realized they really had a choice, and if they used their voice, they could have access to healthy food away from home. And so really our e-commerce technology provides choice and acknowledges that the consumer has, there's an incredible variations like a thumbprint in what one considers local and sustainable, and our e-commerce allows you to shop by what's important to you. And everything we do is fully transparent at the time of order. We provide farm profiles, videos, and full source transparency for storytelling. This is an example of an online program that we run for Peapod. As you can see, it's called the Local Farm Box. On the lower right is an example of the box. We also run other programs with other products, such as meats. Everything comes with a recipe and farm profiles as well. And then we provide, again, the metrics on everything. So you're looking at not just produce and organics, you're looking at sustainable and humanely raised meats. You're looking at organic dairy, cage-free eggs, bakery, and other responsibly sourced products. So we basically have 3 aspects to our technology. We started out with e-commerce, and then we launched Open Fields in 2017. Open Fields basically takes $6 billion worth of purchasing data, and we scrubbed it by 85 sustainable attributes. So those attributes run into categories such as ecologically sound, fair trade, human health, locally sourced, and even seafood. And basically what we do is we provide this custom searching experience through Open Fields. So somebody can go online and say, show me what is 50 miles from me that is organic, show me humanely raised meats within my state. We have custom definitions of local by mileage radius, state, combinations of state, or even state programs. We also provide compliance with sustainability programs such as ASHI STARS, which is the American Association for Sustainability in Higher Ed, Real Food Challenge, and Healthcare Without Harm. These programs have requirements and auditing that is required, and so our search tool allows you to search for compliant products for those programs. And just a plug for Google here, at the bottom you will see that in our platform also is the ability to generate Google Maps to show the location of the farm, and it also displays the mileage to the location of the person searching. So if you think of Open Fields, as we consider Open Fields the possible, and the possible is really what's out there that's available to purchase, but has not been, has been purchased by someone else, but not necessarily purchased by the person searching. Open Fields reporting is a post-transaction product that we have that allows any location that uses our services to be able to run metrics on their sustainable purchasing. Often you'll find a distributor or a company that is selling a product will provide reporting, but when you really think about it, like somebody like the University of Virginia, which is highlighted here, will use 20, 30 different sources. So to get that whole holistic reporting, you really need to do data collection from all your purchasing. So we basically take that data collection and then we provide our clients with a dashboard from which they can tell their sustainable story. And again, just like you can search by custom metrics, you can run your reports by custom metrics as well. So this is basically a STARS report for the University of Virginia, all their locations, all their purchasing. And one thing to note is that since there is no single definition for responsible sourcing in the food space, these reports can be run multiple times for multiple reasons. Some people might want to run a full sustainability report and a STARS report, and we provide that complete flexibility. We also can offer the ability to do very large-scale metrics across an entire enterprise, the entire country, et cetera. Aggregate is our e-commerce platform. You had looked at the flow chart for that. So Aggregate, this is what it looks like when a purchase is actually happening. An institution would go online to place, let's say, the apples that you see on the left. The buyer would see the price, the pack size, which is important to institutions. Things are sold in 20-pound cases usually. They would see the farm that is growing the product. They would see the miles to their location to see if it complies with their definition of local. If you look at the top, you will see that there are tabs for days of the week. What we do is we use this as an advanced ordering system where multiple institutions, 60, 70 perhaps in a region, will go online and order by the week, a month in advance. And then what we do is we add up all of that demand and give a single order to a farm with what they need to have available each week. And then basically on the other side of Aggregate, distributors are made aware of when the product is coming in and when the customer is expecting it. Believe it or not, Aggregate is a tool that is being used now by the nonprofit world. We just formed a collaboration with the National Farm to School Network, and we'll be launching a pilot in June in Illinois. And basically what will happen is we will be using our reporting tools to gather information on their farm to school activity in Illinois. And then we will identify common products that all school districts are buying and create an Aggregate platform for them to scale the farm to school movement in Illinois through the use of Aggregate. So we're very excited about that. Behind the scenes in Aggregate are tools for farms to become food safety compliant. One thing the law is law, and the Food Safety Modernization Act requires farms and will require farms, regardless of size, to be able to comply with food safety. So basically they will have to say when they harvested their product, the date that they packed it, who picked it up, when it was delivered, and then what source it came from. And that could be a farm or even a field. So Aggregate provides this behind the scenes for the farmer. We provide it free to any farmer that works in our system. Basically, but also food hubs and cooperatives can use it to manage their own business almost as a small ERP system. Basically then from that data, labels can be generated, and those labels then can be put on the boxes with barcodes for full compliance with large distributors. So basically we allow that small farmer to play in a much bigger space by providing them with the food safety. And this is super important. There was actually as you know, last week an E. coli breakout. And it's interesting, they've identified where that romaine lettuce actually grew, but I think you can tell that it was a very large grower because there were outbreaks in 11 states. That tells you that that's a large grower when that product is getting into 11 states. So when you do purchase locally and you know where that food is coming from, you get a label like this on your box, and it's just a much more contained issue. So that's another reason to purchase local. And then just bigger picture, all of this activity gets entered into our database, obviously. Again, more than $1 billion of sustainable transactions have run through our system, and that continues to grow. but we're able to turn around and deliver metrics to large food service management companies, distributors, nonprofits, and the government as well. And we do that by a variety of metrics that you can see on the screen: location, farm, SKU, spend, food category, and product. So just real quickly, I'll talk about the timeline because we're going to get into the tech a little bit now. In 2013-14, I personally launched this at my kitchen table using 3 off-the-shelf tools, and I called myself Oz Behind the Curtain because it looked great, but it was a lot of work. And then in 2014, we started to create a proprietary program in MySQL, and we launched our 4 products: Cloud Slot, Open Fields, Aggregate, and Metadata. And that's not a misspelling, that was my grandmother's name. In 2017, we migrated to Google BigQuery for our reporting platform and are currently operating on multiple clouds. In 2018, we have plans to integrate to Google Cloud SQL and API, and then in 2019, we have plans to integrate to Elasticsearch and Google Retail Solutions. So a little bit about how that looks. Right now, you'll see the MySQL on the upper left in the AWS environment. Nightly now, we export that data that goes to the Google Cloud Server and down into BigQuery, where we do manual file exports of large size for enterprise metrics. And then we use Jaspersoft and Power BI for individual metrics and reports that you saw, similar to the University of Virginia. Currently, we're using Algolia for our search engine and Jaspersoft for our reporting, in addition to Microsoft Power BI. And we were one of your first beta customers for BigQuery to Microsoft Power BI. And by the way, we use the consulting firm Aptiv in Chicago to do this. This was their recommendation to move to BigQuery, and we're really appreciative. They did a great job. Okay, so 2018 sees us starting to migrate from MySQL. And so we will be doing that, and we're actually doing that currently, to Google Cloud Server. And what that's going to allow us to do is really scale our business. MySQL was really never meant to run $6 billion worth of purchasing data. It's really was meant to build an e-commerce platform, and we didn't really see this direction when we launched the company. So Google Cloud SQL is going to be able to allow us to scale, and then that data will go into BigQuery and also go into our aggregate commerce system. So we're really excited about that. The next thing, number 2, that you can see on the chart is we also are going to start accepting contributed data. And that would be purchasing data from outside sources, small vendors that don't make it into the system, farmers that have product to sell. So we basically are transitioning to a full, true marketplace. 2019, you see us also transitioning to Google Elasticsearch, which would possibly replace Algolia for us, so that there's more full integration. We would probably also use your Kibana tool, and then also transition to using Google Cloud and BigQuery for our e-commerce as well, which would be a whole environment for us, and the idea of that is very, very exciting. So why did we choose Google Cloud Platform? Well, Aptiv chose it for us first, but why do we love it? The open platform integrates seamlessly with our MySQL database, so there were no issues making a transition. The migration was quick and easy. We started in late November, and we were done by the holidays, so it was wonderful. It was about 30 days, and we had complete visibility that was not possible with MySQL. The data prep is intuitive and transparent, and there's many of us that access it and use it. BigQuery is compatible with a wide variety of reporting solutions that we're beginning to experiment with, which is exciting. The flexible structure allows us to grow when the time is right. The managed services and security allow us to grow faster than our learning curve sometimes, and Elasticsearch and Retail allows us to run our apps from a single database. So just at a glance, obviously technology scales all sorts of things, but in our space, what is really exciting is that it's scaling a movement. It's scaling a true movement to be able to put together and scale and really have impact not just on local farms, but equal access to healthy foods in all neighborhoods, in rural neighborhoods, urban neighborhoods. We all go to restaurants and eat local food on the menu, but it's exciting to us when we see that food moving into low-income communities, communities that don't have grocery stores, when you see people having access to healthy food and their health improving. So basically what Google is doing for us is allowing us to scale a movement. And so we see technology as a tool in that regard, and we're very grateful. Just some stats on us. We've saved 1,500 metric tons of CO2 since inception. And our technology allows buyers to source by custom mileage parameters. Small farms producing fruits and vegetable consumption usually don't use harmful pesticides. That is usually used to grow food not for humans. So the small farmers that you see on the roadside at your farmer's market usually don't use those pesticides. And so our system now identifies 12 criteria for ecologically sound, certified organic foods, et cetera, that support these small farms. One thing that's super important is that the rise of superbugs in this country is due to the antibiotic resistance compounded by the antibiotics that we eat in our food. It isn't because we have taken too many antibiotics, it's because we eat too many antibiotics. And there are a lot of poultry producers and pork producers who are now realizing this and really transitioning, and we commend them to being fully no antibiotic ever. It's actually called NAE. And our system identifies products that are NAE, and we actually run an NAE program for Chicago Public Schools. And then the average age of the American farmer is 58. And what we really want is we want the next generation to want to stay on the farm. We want farming to be a viable occupation. We want there to be abundance, and we want there to be hope. And so really that is why we're here. And basically what our farm to school programs do, our farm to cafeteria programs, our CSA programs, really are to create that real scalable model for the future so that we all thrive.
And that's a wrap. Well, thank you, Linda. So before we dive into the Q&A, I've actually prepared a few questions myself for Linda. So to start, how would you define local, and how does that definition come into play when serving communities around the United States?
Yeah, so, well, my personal definition really doesn't matter because local is in the eye of the beholder. So for some people, it might be what's down the road, what's within 50 miles of me, what's in my state, what's in the states touching me. That's actually somebody's definition. The state of Rhode Island's definition is the state of Rhode Island. So really what we do is we allow folks to both search and purchase by what their definition is. And then for the reporting and metrics to be run by what our client's definition is. For instance, Airmark's definition is 250, but a lot of their clients, it's not their definition. And so we really allow for that custom definition. Yeah.
That's great. And originally you started out by creating sustainable and local food systems. Now you collect national scale food data. How does that data drive consumer decisions?
Well, I think what's really interesting about our database is that we did not realize when we started collecting this data that there's a lot that the consumer is buying that's already local and sustainable, and they didn't know it. So I think what's happening is it's exciting for people to see, oh, I didn't realize that that was grown in Michigan. I didn't realize that that chicken that I'm eating has no antibiotics in it. And so really what we're doing is we're creating opportunities for education, and an educated consumer will drive the movement. Yeah.
And in today's complicated food system, how can the average person drive change? How can someone navigate the variety of labels and classifications to make more environmentally conscious choices?
Well, I'd say that obviously there's a lot of labeling that we see, and there's a lot of labeling we see that isn't true. And so I think that there's legislation being done by that, and that's very, very important work. But as consumers, I think what we have to do is use our voice. I think that what's really interesting is we see the loudest voices on college campuses today. And really what's happening is rather than demand local food on a menu, they are demanding it everywhere they go. They want it on their college campus. They want it in their dorms. They want it eventually when they go out into the world. They want it at work. They want it and you see people, even healthcare, people wanting to make food choices when they're in the hospital, anywhere they are. And so I think that what we can do is keep using our voice, because everybody's individual voice is getting pretty darn loud. Yeah.
That's awesome. And looking ahead to 2030, at the 17 Sustainable Development Goals developed by the UN, sustainable food systems are necessary to achieve those goals, like zero hunger and responsible consumption. What would you say are critical practices that must be continued or adopted in order to reach those goals?
Well, I think what's really important is to recognize the entire supply chain needs to be involved. In order to, I was reading those goals this morning, and in order to eradicate poverty and hunger and these very large issues that we have, disease, you really have to engage the whole supply chain. And we have to work together, and we have to collaborate. Nobody can be thrown under the bus. Often we see large companies in this space being thrown under the bus just for being large companies. But it's large institutional buyers and large distributors that have the ability and then the customers to buy this food and move this food. And so we all have to play together, and that's how we see real change. Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, that is certainly an inspiring vision for the future. And now with that, I'd like to thank you again and move to the live Q&A. We'll be back in less than a minute. So now we have some questions from the audience. To start, what was the initial prototyping process like for Aggregate?
That's very fun. It makes me laugh reading that question. That was 5 years ago. So basically, we used just an off-the-shelf e-commerce platform called Volution. You can go to volution.com. We still operate some of those today. And basically, but it was really interesting because typical e-commerce cannot sustain the growth, mostly because you look at pictures of product, and a lot of people buying in the institutional space want to look at lists. So then we developed a list on another platform, and then we would move that data over to Volution, and I mean, I'm telling you, it was very funny. So I would say that it began with very, very basic e-commerce, and then what we really did is we waited until we knew where all the supply chain gaps were and what existed out there before we created our own platform. But that was what the prototyping was. It was barely.
You've come a long way.
Yeah.
And second question is, what's the greatest issue facing farmers today that you think technology can solve?
Well, it depends on which issue they face. There are tons of tech solutions out there in the growing space to help them. I actually just read an article about you all that Google was doing some research on being able to alert farmers of future weather issues that might impact them and how they can protect themselves, which is terrific. So we see a lot of tech solutions on the growing side to help protect farmers and help them scale, help them harvest more efficiently, et cetera. I think that the space we occupy and where we think we help, and there's not that much participation there on the technology side right now, is in bringing their products to market. We're a firm believer that farmers need to focus on growing. That's what they're great at, and we like to have our technology take care of the rest.
And the last question that we have from the audience is, what are FarmLogix's most important metrics and KPIs?
Well, I would say, you know what, again, it's in the eye of the beholder and what they want to report on. But I would say, I think what's most important is when we create that baseline for a customer, when we're in the corporate responsibility space working on a project where we develop that baseline and say, here's where you are today and where do you want to be. And then we help them not only measure, but also identify where there are gaps and rooms for improvement. And so some of that is going to be, maybe you should change your seafood purchasing practices, or, obviously produce is less expensive than sustainable meats. And so maybe you want to add some of that into the mix. And so really, it's really the metrics are the baseline, and then the goal and the achievement.
That's great. Well, those are all the questions that we have from the audience. Would like to thank Linda again for joining us today in our special session today on Earth Day. So thank you again, and stay tuned for more Cloud on Air webinars coming your way every Tuesday.